Welcome to the Karena Virginia Podcast, where we expect the best and we get it. Today, I will be sharing solo. Sometimes I will have experts, sometimes I will have friends, sometimes I might even have a family member. My intention is to assist you in elevating your frequency and to assist you in knowing that everything is possible and it's the law. We can co-create with the universe, and the universe is always conspiring to co-create with us. I think there are two obstacles. One is that we get in our own way based on limiting beliefs and the past. And the other one is that we forget to align and we forget to plug in to a higher source. So think about plugging into the higher realms like plugging in a lamp. If we can have the most beautiful lamp, and if it's decorative, it can look nice. But if we plug it into the electricity, that's when we have light. And one tiny light can illuminate an entire dark space. And that's incredible. So we're going to be talking a lot about this throughout the podcast. And you can watch on YouTube, you can listen anywhere that you hear your podcasts. And if you are on YouTube, please remember to subscribe so that you will know when the latest episode is being released. I appreciate all of you for being here. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself so that there's an idea of where a lot of this wisdom that I share is coming from. Besides studying all of this for probably my entire life, there was also a very strong knowing that I've had since I was a child. And I'm going to be very authentic and sometimes very vulnerable with you because I think that is the best way that I can assist you in overcoming your own challenges and in maybe finding a belief system that works for you. And I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about possibly faith, or maybe even just spending more time in nature where you can see that there is something unexplainable, the synchronicities, the way the morphic fields work in nature, and how everything happens so miraculously. And even if the word miracle is not an easy one for you to comprehend, maybe think about how a baby is made and how there is something that we cannot explain that makes up the existence of this world that we live in. So I was born as a first-generation American. My mom moved from England to New York City in her 20s, and she was pretty courageous. She got on a boat and took about maybe a week to 10 days and didn't know anyone. And she was a nurse in England. She was born in London, but moved to the north. And she decided that she was going to travel America because she had read that America was looking for nurses from Europe, especially England. And she decided she would do it. Her parents said, "You're never going to come home." And my mom said, "Of course I'll come home. I'm just going for a year. I want to experience it." And she always says, "I can't miss a trick." But interestingly enough, my mom also is very British in the way of being extremely proper, very private, all about manners and all about keeping her children in line when we were growing up to make sure that we were safe. My father was born and raised in Rome. He came to America in his 20s. he lived in an orphanage in Rome for a while, and his father passed away at a very young age. And in Italy at that time, rather than helping families, they took the children and they put the children into monasteries, and they had the children kind of taken care of by the church. And my father had some extremely, extremely challenging experiences. And when he was in his 20s, he came to New York and he spoke Italian as his first language, Spanish as his second language. He spoke a bit of French and a bit of Latin. And when he got to America, he did not speak a word of English. He met my mother, and by magnetism, and just remember this because throughout this podcast, we're going to be talking a lot about soulmates and the magnetism in attraction and even twin flames there, and also just a lot of how there is quantum entanglement, which is where science and spirituality meet. So we'll be discussing a lot of these things. But what my mother and father had was this magnetic force between them, even though they didn't understand one another. And they fell in love and they got married and they had 2 children in Manhattan. I was born in New York City, and then they moved to the suburbs and had my sister. I'm a middle child, and I was born feeling different. I always felt different, and I had experience as a child where I would see angels, and I can tell you exactly what they look like because I remember them so vividly. And I would go to Sunday school because we went to church every Sunday, and I would talk to my Sunday school teachers about these angels, and my Sunday school teachers didn't know what to do with me. And that was kind of the story of my childhood, where people didn't know what to do with me. And they would say, go ahead and look in the workbook. And I would say, I don't see it in the workbook. I see Moses, I see, et cetera, et cetera. And I always just felt so dismissed, and I didn't understand why it was so complicated for people to talk about this. I thought it was maybe a secret because I just assumed everybody saw what I saw. And my family kind of thought maybe I was imagining them, or maybe I was saying things for attention because I was a middle child and we didn't have any other family around. So Dad worked many, many hours in Little Italy, New York, and Mom took care of 3 kids and a house and cooked huge meals every day. That was part of what made her feel, I think, that she was living her purpose. And obviously, to do that, she was not working full-time as a nurse. She left nursing when my sister was born. Actually, when I was born, she was working a little bit. And then when my sister was born, she became a full-time mom. And I do think that must have been challenging for her because, again, she came from a very different culture and we were living in the suburbs. And she was one of those moms that would breastfeed in Central Park. And then living in the suburbs, I think she probably felt quite different herself. Anyway, I went through some difficult times as a child, really feeling misunderstood, and teachers who had my brother first, who was a born genius with an extremely high IQ, unlike me. um, they just assumed that when Karena Ferrari came along, I would be the same. And here I was, this child who broke the crayons because I wanted half of a crayon to go to a friend, and if somebody wanted red, we could share. And I had these ideas of sharing and love and kindness in a way that was very misunderstood as well. And it was very hard. It was very hard. And that inner child lives inside of us. And he or she is always coming to the forefront to be heard and validated. by us. And our role as adults is to learn how to fall so deeply in love with that inner child. And in order to lift our vibration, and in order to utilize what I will be talking a lot about with the law of attraction, which is like attracts like, and how when we feel positive emotions, we attract more positive outcomes. In order to believe that we're worthy of what the divine has in store for us, which is the reality, it is the law, we have to learn how to love ourselves. So that was something that I spent quite a bit of time in my life doing and still do. Um, it's kind of a form of recovery. When we are highly sensitive, which I am and always have been, and when we go through these experiences as a child where we think that there must be something wrong with us when adults look at us like we're odd. So when I was about 11 and a half, I decided I needed a break from life. And I can tell you every single sensory part of me that went into this. And I think if anyone in my family listened to this, they'd probably feel very sad. I don't think they know the extent of this. But I'm going to say it because I do believe that there are many children and teenagers that are really, really longing to be validated and heard and understood. And this time in the world is much more complicated than it was in the early 80s when I was a child. So I didn't know about the law of attraction from science or from the way it's discussed now. I just knew because I experienced it in my life metaphysically and through my mysticism and through my contact with the angelic realm. And I would sometimes just lie in the grass and look up into the heavens and say, okay, show me this form in the clouds, and I would see it. So I knew, and I decided that I would take a break from life and that I would go to the hospital. And so I manifested this and I made all the agreements of how I wanted it to be. And I didn't want to just go there and come home. So I didn't want to just break my arm. I wanted to go there and I wanted to be able to rest from everything. And I didn't want to watch television. In fact, to this day, I rarely watch television because I don't, it's interesting, but the screen has always been sort of disruptive to me. And as a child, I mean, my brother and sister would just say, okay, there goes Karena. I very rarely watch television except for Little House on the Prairie, 8 o'clock Monday nights. I remember that. And I think what I loved about it was that goodness came from goodness. And there was true love there. And there was something so cozy about it. So anyway, I didn't want to just watch movies or anything. I just wanted to lay in the hospital bed and be with the angels and be with myself and be in the vibration that I understood so well without the noise, without these authority figures telling me how I needed to be. Because I just assumed that if I was sick, the nurse would be kind and they wouldn't tell me that I was doing everything wrong. And I could be a victim of being sick instead of being told, shame on you. And you are a misfit and all of those things that I was receiving externally. So I decided I would just get a really bad stomach ache and it wouldn't just go away. But I didn't want to be throwing up either. So I had designed this. And I said, it can happen in the summer. lo and behold, I got so sick, and I was misdiagnosed by the pediatrician, and Dr. Sabella, I remember him very well. And he told my parents that I was having menstrual cramps. And one day I was laying in my mother's bed and I said, something is really wrong. And at that point, I was already experiencing a very heightened awareness because I hadn't eaten in days. And when we don't eat, we know we are not using energy to metabolize our food. And so there's more energy that can be used for meditation and for going deeply into our spiritual practices. The ancient yogis have known this for years. And that's what fasting does. So, in fact, many religions understand this. So I told my mom something was really wrong, but not because I was in that manifestation phase. I actually completely forgot about that. I was too sick to even recognize that. So my mother, being a nurse, said, let me take you to the lab and have your white blood cells checked. And my white blood cell count was normal. So my body was indicating that I was fine. My body was saying there's nothing wrong. And that night I went to sleep and I woke up in the middle of the night and the message was, you're going to die if you don't get help right now. And I was going into 6th grade and 11 and a half. I woke up my mother because I was sleeping with my parents because even they were nervous. They saw that I was sort of dissolving in a way. And I don't really know why they didn't take me to the hospital at the time. Well, I know my father just trusted my mom, and I think my mom to this day lives with that remorse because my mom in the middle of the night took me to the hospital, and I remember I had those little baby doll pajamas on. They were like little panties with a little dress, and it was green and white flowers. And my little sister remembers because she saw me going to the car and she had a sense that something was really off. And when I got to the hospital, they discovered that my appendix had ruptured and they did emergency surgery. And it was in that surgery that I had a near-death experience. And in that near-death experience, it was pure validation that everything I knew was real and that the love of our angels is the most beautiful love that we can ever possibly imagine. And the only way I can explain this is that as a mother, and I'm a mother myself, I know that there is nothing like the love I have for my children. And as a daughter, I know that there's that deep love from my mom. But with love, as a parent on this earth realm, we also have fear because there's the polarity, just like a battery, a positive and a negative for it to work, right? So if a mother doesn't have fear for her child, a mother will let her child run out into the street, or a mother will let the child play with fire. So that's part of the human existence, is that fear. But the way angels love us is it's not just an unconditional love, it's way beyond that. It is an existence that is something that I can't explain in human language. I think maybe I can help people feel it one day, but to explain it is way too difficult because it's not, for me, it wasn't about different colors. It wasn't about going into this light. It was this existence of these flowy white beings that looked at me with a love that I've never ever experienced on this earth realm. And it was the feeling that I had from their love. And that feeling was complete ecstasy. Complete ecstasy. The ecstasy of a heart that beats so deeply into our entire body and our entire energy field. And when I mean ecstatic, I don't know a word that is in the human language that is in English or another language that can explain the ecstasy, because it's beyond. So when I came back to life, my best friend who lived around the corner, Cheryl, she told me that I had died and come back to life, but nobody in the hospital told me. And her mom was a nurse as well, and her mom told her not to tell me. And that's when I started putting everything together. And my parents were so distraught by the whole thing that they really didn't want to talk about it. And when I tried to talk about it, my mom said it was the anesthesia and it was the medicine and it was that I was so sick I was hallucinating. Now when I talk about it with my mom understands and will have these open conversations with me. But when my father passed away, I happened to be with him, and he always knew that I had these experiences. And I sometimes think he might have as well, but he didn't share. And one night I was sleeping next to him and he was in a hospital bed at home. We had hospice and I didn't want to leave him. And I had both my children, 2 and 4, and they were at mom's and dad's house sleeping. And I went over to him and he opened his eyes really, really wide. And he had his hands in the air and he was saying, Mama, Papa, Morella, Zia, Zio, Nonno, Nonna. And he was talking in Italian. And what he was saying in Italian was, I see you all. I love you all. I know. Okay, okay. And it was all in Italian. And so I sat with him and he looked at me and he knew that he could say this to me. And he said, Karina, Karina, they say it's very, very good. They say it's so good, Karina. And I said, I know, Daddy. I know, Daddy. I know. And they're waiting for you. Go back to sleep. And my mom happened to be next to me in the bed that we were sleeping in next to my father. And I said, Mom, did you see that? Did you hear that? And my mom said, Yes, I did, pet. But, it's just the morphine, pet. It's just the morphine. Go back to sleep. Go back to sleep, pet. And now when I talk about it, we've had so many experiences in our family with the afterlife coming to visit that there's no way of my family denying it at all anymore. But that's for another time and more stories that I can share. But the reason why I'm sharing all of this now is because I think it gives a platform for a lot of what I'm going to be sharing with all of you without spiritual bypassing. And what is spiritual bypassing? Spiritual bypassing is when we will say, oh, everything's fine. And, oh, it's okay to not be kind because it's a way of setting a boundary that is not enabling someone's actions. Or spiritually bypassing is to say, don't feel your emotions, just sit and pray and just sit and chant. Or, spiritual bypassing is also a way of dismissing people because we decide that what we want to do is just elevate. And it's a very easy thing to do in this day and age because when we know how to elevate, it's a beautiful place to be. I've learned how to elevate and come back to earth very quickly. I've been teaching yoga for over 25 years, and I would teach with my children, and I would go into the zone because the type of yoga that I I specialize in is extremely spiritual, and I would go into that zone and then I'd have to change a diaper. And I'm also married to an extremely mainstream man who is an attorney and who finds it he sort of senses a feeling of abandonment when I go into those frequencies and I just go into that place that I love so much. And he used to say, please come back to earth. So now I know how to go there and I know how to come back. And it's almost like exercise. You want to get your blood pressure. You want to get your heart rate up and you want to be able to get it right back down. So it's something that we can learn how to do. And I will share some very funny stories. I hope to have my husband on this podcast one day where he can just say, oh my God, some really funny stories, like when he couldn't find me and I was out in the woods and I was meditating and he said, you literally were where, you were around snakes. And I just was in a totally different zone. And I said, they're not going to hurt me. I was in too high of a frequency. And he just looks at me and goes, oh my God. But I do believe in those things. I really do believe in those things. So it's pretty interesting marriage. And I think that a lot of you will get some laughs hearing from him. And I hope to bring some other family members on because I think it will keep this real and also accessible to all of you, because I will be talking about things in a very mystical way, because that is a big part of my life. And yeah, I'm so grateful for all of you who are open to receiving this. And I am so grateful for the angelic realm that has showed me what I need to heal in myself in order to show up and be able to share what I know is my purpose to share. So we'll continue. I'm sure I'll be sharing many more stories with you. For now, practice some deep breathing. Be in the present moment. See what you need to do to heal anything from the past that keeps you stuck. Do what you can to not worry about the future, but feel the feelings, because it's in feeling that we heal. So we have to feel to heal. Feeling is healing. But when you feel them, see if you can recognize that they're temporary. What goes up must come down. So even in the height of those emotions that might hurt so much, even when the pain body is screaming, it has to dissipate because that's the law. And it's when we acknowledge that we move through, because what we resist persists. And just know how loved you are, because I can promise you from my heart one thing, that I was not hallucinating and I was not experiencing something from anesthesia, because I've had more experiences with those beautiful beings in my adult life. And I know they're here for all of us. I know it. I know it like I know that I am sitting here recording my voice with a microphone and a computer. It's not just a belief, it's a fact to me. And I truly hope that that resonates with you and that you can receive it, even if it's just a little bit right now, just a little bit at a time, because that's how homeopathy works as well. The tiniest little dose can create the expansion of healing. So just take a small dose of this and remember that when you expect the best, when you feel in your body your wishes, your dreams, and you know that they're possible, there is no way that they won't be reciprocated, because that's science. And possibly now more than ever, as the veil is thinning more and more and more, these miracles are happening. And there's no reason why the miracle can't be yours now. I'll see you soon.